Hello everyone, and welcome to another Modswell video. I am your host Maxwell. Today we are back, taking a look at my top mods of the week. But before we begin, I do have a bit of a statement. Of late, more and more people have been sliding into my Facebook DMs, messaging me on Xbox, and getting in contact with me in alternative ways. These are spaces that I use to relax, talk to friends and family, and generally, just not places I go to think. With that in mind, from here on out, I will only respond to comments made on YouTube, Discord, Reddit, or Buy Me a Coffee. I am also happy to create a few other areas should that make people's lives easier, but as it is, I think I'm plenty reachable. This is purely so I can separate my work from my free time, and doesn't mean you can't message me to ask to team up on a game on Xbox. I do hope everyone understands. But anyway, let's get into the video, because that's why you're actually here. Up first is a fun little mod adding in 2 brand new bosses. This mod is simply called More Bosses by Oscar the Wolf. Of late we are getting more and more mods with bosses, which is great because for me, there just aren't enough in the base game. The 2 new bosses in this file have their own stats and perks which are roughly in line with the Ebony Knight, so definitely designed for the end of the game. The first is a Nordic warrior who can be found at Geirmund's Hall. This character comes in a set of Nordic gear, including weapons and armor, utilizes spells and shouts, and is generally a different experience from most fights in the game. The second boss is a female warrior who uses steel gear. You can find her by Angevund Camp. All the author has stated on the character is she's strong, and that's a fair assessment. But as with all Skyrim combat, that difficulty will very much depend on the load order. Currently, my build is a tester order, so it isn't exactly difficult to play. With that in mind, I hooked up my Xbox One and tried the mod on a different, more difficult order. I'm using Valraven on the series, but Fatality on the One. So, as I'm sure you can imagine, the Xbox One was far more difficult to fight. More Bosses comes in at a very small 887.3 kilobytes. This is because, overall, the bosses are very vanilla. This works for me, as it means my other mods will overwrite aspects such as appearance and combat. It does however mean that they don't taunt you in fight or have any of those epic voice lines. This is totally fine, because the goal is to kill them, but if you're after a less vanilla boss, these might not suit you. If however, you want to add a fun new challenge to the game, then I highly advise throwing this mod in. I have it in with my other area edits, which seems to work a treat. If this one doesn't happen to be what you're after though, the author has also just released a bunch more bosses in different styles. I even believe more are on the way, so do stay tuned for those. Moving on to another area edit. This time we're editing the Dwemer Ruins and Solstheim using Eastern Dwemer Towers. This mod is going to retexture each of the towers in Solstheim to match the colour profile of the island. In the DLC, these same towers do use some different textures to make them stand apart. Thing is, the job done on it was pretty bad, with the implementation missing the mark with flaws like mismatching elevators, which use the Skyrim designs externally but the Solstheim design internally. This kind of colour matching is actually pretty hard to notice, but for those perfectionists out there, you'll want to check this mod out. Eastern Dwemer Towers uses a design similar to those in Morrowind with updated textures. This really helps to make the ruins stand apart from those in Skyrim. In my opinion, Dwemer from different spots would likely have a fairly uniform design, but not entirely uniform, especially when you consider the crafting materials came from very different locations. I'd expect more grey in Skyrim and brown in Solstheim. The mod author has set the LOD on these buildings to full, meaning they will show from further away without needing an extra file or higher mod size. Beyond this, you also get assets for external parts being retextured, such as Clutter, which uses assets from David Brasher and Enter 77, as well as the new retextured Dwemer doors, which were created by Unimpressed Panda, which is clearly one of the best names in modding. This seems like a whole lot going on for a simple change. However, if you want to show differences from area to area, or if you're on a bit of an immersion kick or just want to see something new, then look no further. For 2.5 megabytes, you can have this pretty stacked mod. I found the price extremely impressive and manageable, even as an overwrite. For placement, I highly suggest playing around with the position, As long as it's below your other architecture replacements, you will see these pop up. When it comes to clutter and doors, the mods will also have to be lower than anything that includes those. I know people who have favourite clutter mods that they're never letting go of, so if that's you, put this above the clutter that you love, but below the architecture you're trying to overwrite. And jobs are good. The third mod I've gone for is Animal Tweaks. This mod has been designed to make animals more accurate across the board, whilst also adding in some extra difficulty. They're tougher, move more accurately for the animal in question, and of course have those all important speed tweaks. I mean, try your hat at running from a bear. I'll make it easy. A giant panda can run at 20 miles an hour, whilst Usain Bolt has hit 23.3. And those things, whilst awesome, aren't exactly the fastest bear, are they? Whilst he is, or was, the fastest human. Okay, that's probably the weirdest tangent I'll ever go on. My point is, Skyrim has the character run far faster than these animals who realistically would catch up with ease. And this mod says no to that. So whenever you want to start a fight against an animal, you are going to have to think, how would I come out in this fight if I were kitted out with armor and sword? If the answer is not well, then probably take a different approach. Seeing as the animals in this file also level up alongside the playable character, it's fair to say this is going to increase the length of your load order right into the late game. The features included in this mod are tougher animals and creatures, higher damage, full level scaling, damage scaling, reduced movement speed when injured, improved abilities, new race abilities, strengths and weaknesses, realistic movement and speed, realistic behaviour, improved AI, faction fixes and improvements, race fixes and improvements, combat style improvements, large creatures can knock down opponents, paralysis defense and magic resistance, Kind's Peace and Animal Allegiance shouts are improved with added benefits. This mod is compatible with the base game, runs no scripts, no leveled edits. It is highly compatible as a mod. These are the words of the author, and from everything I've seen, it is working fantastically. I highly suggest playing this alongside things like Wildlife or Hunterborn. This will let you seriously get the full benefit of all the features available, which as you've seen is a fairly deep list, and you get all of this for 109.5 kilobytes, which means you can easily fit it in. As for placement, I am again going to use the words of the author because I can't say it any better myself. Treat this as an animal AI and combat overhaul. I recommend loading below anything that touches animal AI, stats, combat styles, factions, race data, etc. Load below combat mods like Wildcat. I don't recommend using this with similar mods. And now it's time for my final mod. Here I've opted for Forsworn Minotaurs, which yes, is exactly what it sounds like. This mod is adding in hand-placed Minotaurs to the world space. As you roam the camps of the Forsworn, you are bound to come across this new enemy type. A large, hulking half-man, half-bull. Well, actually many of them. They accompany the Forsworn faction, which really works with their aesthetic as they share a similar colour palette. The headdress worn by the Forsworn in particular starts to look like an attempt at imitation of the beasts, as if they've worshipped them all along. The Minotaurs are strong and have a fairly large health pool, making for a difficult challenge. They can quite easily take down the playable character if you aren't prepared. Because of this, the author has kept their levels low in the early game. Enough to be a challenge, but not so much that you lose your hair. Think trolls in the vanilla game with a little bit more bite. As the game goes on, however, you'll find these beasts getting tougher and tougher and tougher as they continue to level alongside you, giving a better challenge into the late game. Which is kinda perfect because really, that's when you see more of the Forsworn. This mod includes several different versions of Minotaur to ensure you don't just keep seeing the same thing. However, unlike their inventory, there is a limit to that depth, so you will see a fair amount of repeats. Saw what I did there, right? Alluding to my next point. When looting these beasties, you are going to come across all manner of items. It seems the Minotaurs themselves may be kleptomaniacs, as they can possess most of the item types with a random loot pool. I say random, but I haven't exactly been disappointed, so I imagine it is weighted towards certain high quality items. The Minotaurs utilise an unused human skin texture which helps them blend into the game world really quite nicely. They also use larger versions of weapons and armour in the game which are affected by most retextures. In fact, the author states it is best to retexture these things as they're enlarged versions that you're seeing. Overall, I have found this to be a really friendly mod to use. The new spawns fit in so well to the game and the faction that you'd be mistaken for thinking this is all just cut content. But what has really impressed me is that we get all of this in a very easy to use, highly compatible file which will only set you back 11.1 megabytes. I'm taken aback by how something can look this cool, perform this well, and be this easy to use. I highly recommend putting this in your next build. Simply slot it in with your other new spawns if you're using my order, or in with other area edits should you be using the original LLO. But on that, I am going to call it. I have enjoyed playing with some different types of mods this week. Hopefully next I will be playing on my Dark Souls order, ready for release, but you'll have to keep watching for that video. I have left all the usual links in the description below, such as to all of the mods mentioned in the video for both PC and Xbox where applicable. I've also left links to my Discord server, as well as the Skyrim Xbox mod subreddit. You can easily find me on either of these. If this has been helpful, I would really appreciate those likes, comments, and of course subscriptions. Those coupled with watching this far into the video help me decimate the algorithm. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.